We all love a good ending, don't we? That warm, fuzzy feeling of finishing a game always makes us happy. Bosses defeated, world saved, the threat of total annihilation halted until the sequel. But what about those that leave us feeling a bit sad afterwards? The games you walk away from where you just want someone to pat you on the back and tell you that everything will be okay. Adventures that have you questioning whether you could have done things differently, or would it even matter if you could? Now, it's not as black and white as just picking a binary good or bad ending. Sometimes you think you've done the right thing until the implications of your actions dawn on you. There are some on this list that we already know don't end well in the future, with the fates already written for those in the story. Have you really saved the world, or just trapped the hero of Hyrule in a perpetual time loop? Are you able to break a family's curse, or did you honestly get vengeance for your murdered loved ones? Now, these aren't meant to bring you down, but let's have a look at some examples where a happy ending is too good to be true. I'm the emotional wreck that is Kirsten from WhatCulture, and these are the 10 video games where it's impossible to have a happy ending. Number 10. Limbo. Boy Saves Girl is a tale as old as time. Sure, it's been modernised and role-reversed, but the basic tenet is still there. Protagonist A saves objective B, happy ending resolved. When this doesn't happen, and fates are left ambiguous, we often refer to these states as being in limbo. The fates undecided, the players unsure as to what happens next. So kudos to Playdead then for hitting that nail on the head with their 2010 debut, Limbo. Delivering a haunting platformer with its minimal looks and eerie sound design, it creeped many players out with its tone, and the disgustingly massive spider too. It's not that Limbo has a bad ending, it's just that it doesn't have a seemingly good one either. For all intents and purposes, our hero finds his sister in purgatory, but as he does, the screen fades to black, leaving us, well, in limbo, obviously. It's this ambiguity, the lack of resolution and the crushing realization that this might be it. That means there's no happy ending and the pair are doomed to stay like this forever. Number 9. Spec Ops: The Line. There are 4 endings in Spec Ops: The Line. None of these are necessarily good, instead ranging from shock and awe to disbelief at what war can do to someone's psyche. Many an article has been written on the infamous civilian murder scene and the subsequent effect that it has on Captain Walker, but I won't talk about that here. Instead, let's look at the conclusions we can come to in The Line. You can kill yourself on the revelation that you've been hallucinating Conrad. If you decide not to, you can radio in extraction. From there, you can either relinquish your weapon and be led off a broken man, or you can fight back. Should you lose, you'll be gunned down on the spot. Should you beat them, you will resume control of Conrad's company, essentially fulfilling the prophetic nature of being everything you set out to stop at the beginning. It makes a change from the usual dime a dozen good guy saves the day cliche we're accustomed to, and highlights the horror of war's effect on people. Number 8. Metal Gear Solid 5: The Phantom Pain. The saddest part was the 3rd chapter being scrapped. Okay, jokes aside, the worst part about the end of Metal Gear Solid 5 is that we know what's going to happen down the line, with the subsequent fall of Outer Heaven and Zanzibar Land in the original games. What makes it even worse is when we discover the character we thought was Snake for the whole game is actually someone brainwashed to think he is. Prior to that, he was a medic in the real Snake's private military faction, before taking a hit for the boss. This means we have both now and retroactively doomed a somewhat innocent man to death, a man whose loyalty to his leader is rewarded with brainwashing and deception, who will later be killed by a clone of the man whom he once pled allegiance to. It also made fans a bit grumpy at Kojima. In an attempt to smush the timelines and continuity together, just ended up farting about with more retcons instead. Number 7. What Remains of Edith Finch. If you're yet to play Edith Finch, you really should. It's a short, well-written walking simulator that tugs on the heartstrings. What starts as a seemingly straightforward trip down memory lane to the old Finch house soon becomes a sad tale of a family that almost seems perpetually cursed. As you explore the vast and labyrinthine Finch household, with its many nooks and crannies, you learn about the circumstances behind the death of a good 90% of the family. Whilst they do play out through interactive and varied minigames, it's heart-wrenching to be fulfilling the death requirements for each member you're immortalizing in your diary. To spoil the ending wouldn't do it any justice, ruining the impact that it carries, but it's a bittersweet experience to walk away from. Much like Gone Home, it sheds light on what can tear families apart, yet also shows us the bonds that keep them together. Be warned though, the bath scene, it's a tearjerker. Number 6. The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time. Well, okay, hear me out. In Ocarina of Time, for all intents and purposes, Link saves the day. Ganon is banished, the sages do their job, and Link is sent back to his childhood. Though not entirely. Think about it. With all the time-travelling shenanigans and the various branching paths of the games, thank you, Hyrule Historia, we know that Ganon will return at some point. Link also knows this, having retained his memories when the Temple of Time is sealed again. In essence, he's caught in a constant, predetermined loop to always play out the events that transpire in the game. In part, it means he'll never have a happy ending, because he will always be in this cycle of defeating Ganon to ensure the relevant timeline plays out. On paper, your adventure might be over, but for Link, he'll always be playing out the same battles for all eternity. Number 5. Bloodborne. As a rule, From Software don't tend to make cheerful games. The Dark Souls series is steeped in dark, sinister lore, as is Bloodborne. A story involving bloodletting and praying to old Lovecraftian gods is never going to end well, but surely there's a happy Hunter saves day conclusion to reach here. Unfortunately not, as each of Bloodborne's 3 endings show. The first and somewhat easiest option is to willingly submit to Gehrman and be decapitated. This seemingly allows you to wake up from the dream, but suggests that events will still play out regardless. Should you defeat Gehrman, you unwittingly take his place, continuing the cycle of unleashing new hunters into the world. Yet the third and secret ending still offers no real solace after you defeat the Moon Presence. Instead of a token happy ending, you become one of the fabled Great Ones. Does this mean the cycle is broken and you can influence change, or is history doomed to repeat itself? Leave it to From Software to keep it vague, but there's definitely no cheerful resolution in Yharnam. Number 4. Silent Hill 2. The first Silent Hill had a fairly straightforward ending for a survival horror game. Unlikely hero escapes demonic forces with companion and new baby. Don't ask. All was pretty standard. It was in the sequel that the horror game became more introspective as we delve into the psyche of James Sunderland and the quest for his missing, presumed dead, wife. It's only when we learn that she's not presumed but definitely dead, euthanized by her own husband, that the thought of a happy ending leaves our imagination. Besides the joke endings, none of the serious endings leave a happy taste in our mouth. James taking penance by driving into the lake seems, well, deserved. But even the standard man leaves with lady friend doesn't bode well. For one, Maria's coughing hints she'll succumb to the same illness as Mary, foreshadowing the same events happening. It turned survival horror narrative on its head back in 2001, still cited as champion of the genre today, for all the right reasons. However, there is no happy endings to be found here. Number 3. Valiant Hearts, The Great War. What makes Ubisoft's Valiant Hearts great is not that it's glamorizing war, despite its colourful tones and occasionally fun moments, but more that it makes it digestible. It doesn't show the gory and haunting moments of war and the effect it has on many, but it plays out in such a way that you won't forget what happens either. Playing out across different campaigns and characters, the game focuses largely on Frenchman Emile and his German son-in-law Karl, both thrown into the war for different reasons. Fate sadly forces them apart, as they're on opposing sides, with both fearing the other is dead as the story continues. But what makes it worse for Emile is when he inadvertently kills his captain, who is sending men into a suicidal charge. Only meaning to subdue him, Emile is eventually court-martialed and sentenced to death at the game's climax. It sticks in the throat because despite the bright colours and cartoony look, this did happen in the war. We may call it the Great War, but there was nothing great about it. Number 2. Max Payne. As far as gameplay goes, the Max Payne trilogy is an absolute riot to play. Matrix-inspired bullet time, slow-motion diving, and killer gunplay, all the features to make a kick-ass action hero out of our somber hero, the titular Mr. Payne. Yet it's when you step back and realise why he's the way he is, what has brought him to this path of revenge and desire to uncover the circumstance of his wife and child's murder. It paints a darker picture. Granted, not so much by the third game when he's playing Patsy on holiday, but certainly the first game when he's still a New York detective. Max comes home one day to find his family seemingly killed by junkies high on Valkyr, but that's not the end of it. After unravelling the conspiracy and supposedly stopping those behind it, does Max get any closer to closure as he stands atop the Aesir building? Sadly not. In fact, it would take a change of director to give the character any sense of resolution, but that came in Rockstar's installment, Max Payne 3. Number 1. That Dragon Cancer. There is no making light of this game or its real-world source material, and that is exactly why That Dragon Cancer is on this list. Yes, many might shun this and think, why would you make a game about cancer? But it's the fact that it's telling a story that afflicts so many that makes it so much more powerful. Of course, it doesn't have a happy ending, and it's not meant to either. Previously mentioned titles like Edith, Finch and Gone Home touch upon loss and broken homes, but what makes this stand shoulders above the rest is the true story it's based on. Ryan and Amy Green wanted to tell the tale of their son Joel, who was terminally diagnosed with cancer at a mere 12 months old. Imagine knowing your son on their first birthday isn't going to see any more after that. It would crush you. Again, like Edith Finch, some of Joel's experiences are played out in colourful ways, but the message is still there. It's a gut punch, but a well-crafted look into how a family copes with such a tragedy. Ooh, that was an emotional one to get through. What are the saddest endings you've ever had in a video game? Leave a comment and let us know. If you haven't already, click that subscribe button and be sure to check out our other gaming videos. But for now, I've been Kirsten from WhatCulture, and I'm gonna go cry into my pillow.